You didn't announce it. You didn't telegraph the move. No whispers, no warnings, just silence. And then execution. Surgical, clean, devastating. You did something so genius, so out of position, that it didn't just surprise them, it shook them. It felt illegal, not because it broke laws, but because it broke expectations. Their script didn't include your brilliance. Their plans didn't account for your unpredictability. You maneuvered through the chaos like you wrote it. And now they're standing in the aftermath, jaws loose, minds racing, wondering how the one they thought was behind just outpaced all of them. Without cheating, shouting, or asking for permission, they studied your past moves too much, analyzed your patterns like you were a creature of habit. They saw your kindness and thought it meant softness. They saw your stillness and thought it meant stagnation. But what they never realized was that while they were playing checkers with your image, you were building a game board they couldn't even comprehend. And when the moment came, you didn't just make a move. You redefined the term. That's why it felt criminal. Because it wasn't just clever. It was poetic. It wasn't just effective. It was invisible until it was already too late to stop. They don't know how you did it. That's what haunts them. They replay conversations, study old texts, scrutinize every gesture they once overlooked, trying to find the clues, but there were none. Because you didn't follow the blueprint, they thought you had no blueprint at all. But what you had was better than planning. You had clarity. You had time. You had the discipline to stay quiet while they underestimated you. Out loud. And the genius of your execution now rests in its simplicity. You weren't playing their game, so they couldn't read your strategy. And when the move landed, it cut deep. Not through the ego, but through the illusion. Psychologically, the mind is wired to distrust what it can't predict. And you've become unpredictable in the most precise way. You no longer respond to chaos, you create in it. You no longer react to threats, you outgrow them before they arrive. And that kind of foresight, the ability to prepare in silence, to build without announcing, to execute without warning, it feels unfair to people who rely on being seen to feel valid. You, however, never needed the spotlight, you needed the results, and now that they're here, people don't know whether to be impressed or afraid, so they call it suspicious, as if genius must be a crime. You didn't break the system, you exposed its weaknesses. You didn't cheat, you outthought. You took everything they gave you, doubt, dismissal, ridicule, and you turned it into leverage. While they were looking for loopholes, you were rewriting rules. You weren't ahead of the curve, you became the curve. And now they're stumbling behind, trying to label what they can't define. But that's the beauty of your move. It left no fingerprints, just impact, just awe, just silence that says, I told you nothing, but I showed you everything. They feel violated, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something they didn't believe you could. It wasn't vengeance. That's what separates you from them. You weren't trying to make them hurt. You were just done letting them dictate the boundaries of your brilliance. You weren't out to prove them wrong. You were out to prove yourself right. And now, without saying a word, without raising your voice, you've become the consequence they never saw coming. You didn't argue, you just ascended. And the altitude burns them, because they realize now they never knew what you were truly capable of. And the scariest part, you still haven't even shown your full hand. They're uncomfortable now. You enter rooms differently. Your presence interrupts patterns. People hesitate around you, not because you're aggressive, but because you're aware. You see too much. You speak too little. You move too efficiently. And that efficiency looks dangerous to people who thrive in disorder. You make them feel exposed just by existing, because they used to think you were predictable, contained, controllable. But now, you're none of those things. You're the proof that silence is a tactic, that kindness is a weapon, that patience is a setup. And that scares them more than rage ever could. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. They're scrambling to understand what you did, how you flipped the script without flipping the table. But the truth is, you didn't change overnight. You've been building this version of yourself in plain sight. You just didn't explain it. And now that the results are undeniable, they want to know the steps. They want the formula, but there is none. Because your genius was born from feeling, from suffering, from decoding every failure into fuel. You don't owe them a roadmap. You owe yourself the win, and you're collecting quietly, thoroughly, completely. Now your name carries weight. It didn't before. Not because of popularity, but because of precision. Because people now know you don't move unless it's meaningful. You don't act unless it's intentional. That's why it all feels illegal. Because brilliance with restraint is rare. Success without noise is unsettling. And you've mastered both. You don't need them to clap. Their confusion is louder than any applause ever could be. You're not trending. You're transcending. And those who once dismissed you now flinch when your shadow stretches into their comfort zones. Keep going. Keep building. Let the silence grow heavier. Let the genius get sharper. You are no longer just someone they doubted. You are someone they fear. They never truly understood. And what you did, that move that shifted everything, that was just the beginning. You didn't break rules. You broke expectations. And when brilliance breaks through expectation, it feels illegal to the unprepared. But for you, it was always just another day in the lab, plotting brilliance in the dark. They don't understand your moves because they don't understand your frequency. You're not louder than them. You're clearer. Your energy doesn't spike in public. It hums beneath the surface, steady and untouchable. You don't vibrate at the frequency of gossip, of chaos, of attention. You operate above it, beyond it. While they chase noise and validation, you chase alignment. That's why your absence echoes louder than their presence. You don't match their tone. You disrupt it. And disruption, when done with grace, terrifies the people who relied on your compliance. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to bend the air when you walk into a room. And now that they've felt it, they can't unfeel it. They try to figure you out, but their tools don't work anymore. Their strategies, provocation, flattery, shame, bounce off you like glass. Because when you elevate to another frequency, you're no longer reachable by the methods that once triggered you. They don't understand how you can stay calm in chaos, how you can respond without emotion, how you can walk away without announcing it. But that's the thing about higher frequencies. They're not emotional reaction, they're energetic boundaries. You don't react, you redirect. You don't play defense, you disappear. Not to avoid, but to preserve. And they feel the loss, not because you punish them, but because your silence is now a reminder of what they can no longer touch. At this frequency, you stop waiting for apologies. You stop craving closure. You stop needing explanations from the very people who never had the capacity to offer them. Your peace is no longer conditional. You found something sacred in the stillness. Something strategic in solitude. While they reach out just to be heard, you speak only when it carries consequence. Your words have become rare. Your time has become guarded. Your movement has become meaningful. That's the mark of another frequency. You don't rush. You don't prove. You exist in precision. And precision is power. Psychologically, people trapped in low vibrational patterns interpret your detachment as arrogance. But it's not arrogance. It's awareness. You've seen how small they think, how reactive they are, how they feed on tension to feel important. You don't feed them anymore. You've stopped being the emotional buffet for people who never learned to cook their own clarity. You operate in a new realm now, where peace isn't earned through submission, but through discernment. You don't engage with drama because drama no longer stimulates you. It bores you. You've outgrown the need to be right. You're obsessed with being free. They can't explain you now, and it eats at them. Because before you were predictable. You'd explain yourself, defend your tone, shrink your volume to keep the peace. But now, you say nothing. You look through them. You walk through fire without flinching, and that kind of control is alien to them. They confuse your detachment with coldness. But it's not cold, it's clean, it's refined. It's the kind of presence that comes only from surviving chaos and choosing not to carry it anymore. You are operating on a frequency that can't be found in arguments, in gossip, in groupthink. You are on a level where solitude feels like a superpower, and silence feels like strategy. They replay your last conversation because they don't understand what changed. What they don't realize is you changed the moment you realized they were repeating patterns designed to keep you predictable. You stepped out of their rhythm, out of their emotional economy. You no longer trade your presence for potential. You require reciprocity. And reciprocity isn't loud, it's precise. They weren't prepared for the version of you who no longer flinches, who no longer justifies, who no longer tolerates confusion dressed up as connection. You became surgical, and that scalpel tone, it cuts everything they once used to keep you hooked. Let them watch, let them spin in confusion. Your new frequency doesn't exist to be explained, it exists to filter. And the ones who can't tune in will label it anything but what it is. Power. True, quiet, internal power. The kind that doesn't move to be seen. The kind that moves because it's time. You are no longer waiting for anyone to recognize your growth. You embody it. And the gap between you and them grows wider every time they try to provoke a version of you that no longer exists, or they can't quite place you anymore. You walk into rooms like you no longer belong to gravity. Your steps are calculated but never rehearsed. Your words are fewer now, but they land with more weight. You aren't louder, you're clearer, scarper, scarier in your calm. The old version of you used to seek resonance with every voice in the room. This version, it speaks only when it's worth it. You used to decode a noise. Now you navigate signal. You are operating on another frequency, and they feel the interference every time you pass by. Their confusion isn't your concern. Their dissonance is not your fault. It's just a side effect of their failure to evolve while you transcended the very conversation. They're still trying to win. You stopped responding to what doesn't reach you. That's the shift. You don't lower your volume. You raise your standard. You aren't tuned in to gossip, to guilt trips, to energy that doesn't serve your direction. Your station no longer broadcasts insecurity. And that's why they feel you but can't understand you. Your vibe used to be accessible, predictable, molded to fit their narrative. But you deleted that version without announcement, and now the static they feel around you is the sound of their projections failing to land. You're not hard to reach. You're just done being accessed by people who didn't respect the signal when it was clear.